in the vibes. I don't know why.
All right, we are live, Estrella, and we are
Okay.
here. We're glad you're with us. I'll do a brief introduction again because I think that some of our viewers were not able to catch that first one. We are not live on Instagram today, everybody. We weren't able to make that connection come through, but we will post this episode on our IG story,
Mhm.
so at KCN, so everybody can view it there. So joining me today, it's not Estrella, it is Estrella Rogers, and she is a KCN elite therapist and coach. She is currently the owner of Without Limits Counseling Services, PLLC. She provides relationship coaching through her program Star Level Coaching, where she services both locally and internationally. She's a certified Gottman therapist and overall couples rock star. Estrella, welcome back to KCN. We love working with you and are so glad you could be here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be a part and to be here today.
We appreciate your feedback. And, it's kind of an interesting topic today, Estrella. We're talking about the role of gender in relationships and how gender can play a role in communication and expectations. And
Hmm.
I think that, people kind of get it wrong when it comes to gender and relationships. They think, well, there's male and female, and the male
Hmm.
has the male thing and the female has the female. But we're going to kind of uncover some truth and bust some myths today about what people may think about that. And I really want to start off um, with everybody with a quote. And this is my opening quote. I love to do this because it sets the tone and gives us something to chew on a little bit. A relationship with no gender roles. We both hustle, we both cook, we both clean, we both pay, we both spoil each other. And the reason I love that quote today, Estrella, because it busts a lot of the norms. People
Yeah.
think that men and Joseph Benton says hello, Mrs. Rogers. So Joseph
Hello.
Tomika Benton is there. Must be a fan. We got a lot of fans of Estrella. We always love it when they join in. Thanks for joining, Joseph. I think a lot of people feel like there are things that men do and things that men don't do, and things that women do or should do, and
Hmm.
things that women shouldn't do. But really, I mean, Estrella, are we able to take gender out of it and just really talk about individuals in a relationship? I mean, what needs, expectations, and approaches are, as opposed to men and women. Like, why does it have to be gender and this is for men and this is for women? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think the hard part about that is that, we are taught in that way, right? So we're taught that way. And so, but should it be that way? And that like you said, that's the question. Does it have to be that way? Because the truth is, we are all individuals. We are all individuals. And when we have a relationship, it's important that everybody's desires and everybody's needs are met. And if we take out the gender role part of it, and instead of saying you should do this and you should do that based off of your gender, as opposed to us saying you should do this and you should do that based off of how we have decided our relationship is going to go. So when you talk about in the quote, of individuals being able to help each other with washing dishes and doing chores and things of that nature, that makes a team because now we took out the role of the man that you have to cut the lawn or the woman has to wash the dishes. But now we're saying as a team, how are we going to get these things done when we take out that gender role expectation?
Right, and I think you're so right, and I think that society, how we're raised, right, as youth, I mean, it's modeled
Mhm.
to us by our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, whoever raised us, and whatever environment
Yeah.
we grew up in. Those roles are modeled, and that's how we pick up. And I think what's so important, as with all of our family of origin, when two people come together, they need to say, well, okay, what did love look like, right? How was it
Mm,
expressed? And let's talk about those gender roles and what the
yes.
expectations are. I think they're kind of societal expectations that may dictate a portion of our sexuality, our personality, our self-image, right? And so
Hmm.
in expressing emotions, for example, what are men taught this versus women, and how do we correct those norms and view them correctly?
Hmm.
Because I think that a lot of people say, well, a man should be this and a woman should be that. So what do you think some of those norms that we can bust out a little bit that men and women are taught, and how can we view those correctly in the context of relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think we know from the beginning, like most men are taught that certain aspects of their personality are not acceptable. So when a young boy falls, he's automatically taught that he's not supposed to cry. He's supposed to man up and he's supposed to, suck it up. A young lady can fall and it's okay if she cries. It's okay if she has feelings about that. And so when we look at the norms of society, society expects for the man to be this stature at all times. He's supposed to, stay strong and be strong, so to speak, at all times. A man is not supposed to, as a child, be in the kitchen cooking with the little play sets. I don't know if you ever saw that on there was like a meme or something about it before, but there was a young boy who was playing with a cookware set and everybody went crazy about it. And so it was like, is he supposed to be learning how to cook? Is he supposed to be playing with that play set? And so when we think about societal norms, it's like, no, the norm is that the guy is supposed to be outside. The woman is supposed to be inside. She's supposed to be in the kitchen. She's supposed to be cleaning the house. She's supposed to be taking care of the kids while he's supposed to be providing for the house. He's supposed to be doing all of those masculine things. That's not what what the female would be. And so men have their jobs
Right.
and we're taught that.
Right. And you know what? I'm gonna come clean and admit to everybody, Estrella, I was the guy who had the Easy Bake Oven when I was a kid. I mean,
Ooh.
and I had that light bulb oven, those nasty powdered mixes you'd add water to, you push
Hmm.
the cake through the light bulb and cook it and then squeeze the frosting on it that you mix with water, right? I mean, I'm a chef now. It's funny. And so, I think that it's a safe statement. This is going to be a recurring theme that we're going to hear today,
Hmm.
that really there are emotions and people may
Yeah.
ascribe them more to masculine or more to feminine, but they're just human emotions,
Hmm.
skills, characteristics, and traits. And as men and women, we each express both feminine and masculine qualities.
Yeah.
And and that's good. And I think the more balance we have, not
Hmm.
just in revealing and pursuing that it kind of, I think, will help eliminate some issues. And it kind of leads into, when we're talking about roles and gender in relationships,
Hmm.
what are those roles and relationships center around expressing sexual desire and pursuing sexual activities? Because there are some
Hmm.
gender norms around those things. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So I think, along with, and honestly, um, this kind of takes you just a little bit to where when we grow up and women are taught, a lot of women are taught to be either submissive. And when we talk about submission, that means quiet. And so a lot of women are taught to be quiet. A lot of women are taught as they grow up that, the man's place is he's allowed to be more vocal. The woman is not supposed to be as vocal. And so what happens is in their sexual relationship, a woman is then taught also that I am to, in that sense, please my husband. And
Hmm.
so now, because that's what she's taught, a lot of women don't express what their needs are. A lot of women don't express their desires because not only that, but by society, a woman that is vocal about her sexual desires, she's looked upon as being shameful. She's looked upon as being not a what's the word I'm looking for, but not a I don't know, a good woman. Let's just say that she's
Not,
looked
yeah,
at.
not pure. Maybe
Yes.
she's easy or fast or
Hmm.
slutty, or, it's a negative connotation. You're right. And yet
Yeah.
when men express, and this is funny, when men express strength
Hmm.
or advance in relative to sexual desires and needs, oh, he's just a strong man. He's virile, right?
Hmm.
He's potent, and that's
Yep.
considered normal. And I think
Yep.
that's one of those misinterpretations that we really just got to throw out the window, because
Hmm.
both men and women, if they're going to have a healthy relationship, they've got to be willing to express their sexual desires, their
Yes.
needs, their wants, what they like, what they don't like. And that is
Yeah.
not, we've got to stop relegating that quality communication to one
Hmm.
sex or the other. And you
Yeah.
know what? I mean, imagine how tiring it would be in a relationship if I had to always be the one that brought that up to my wife and she never
Hmm.
brought it up to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would get old,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
or and it's just, and it's kind of in a related topic, it's the same thing as a male taking the lead in intimacy
Hmm.
and sexual, or versus a woman.
Yeah.
If a woman takes the lead, she's fast, She's not
Yes.
reputable. She's considered less than. If a man does it, society says, "Oh, that's just normal. That's what men
Yeah.
should do," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and that again, I think we can kind of throw some of that stuff off the window. And I think pop culture is so
Yeah.
disadvantaged for women because men's bodies, power, control versus women are being objectified. Women
Yeah.
are taken advantage more in society based on their bodies of what they are or
Hmm.
are not versus
Yeah.
men. And it's such a
Which,
it's another standard, a double standard.
yeah. Yeah, which in turn, as we said, makes women not express themselves sexually. A lot of women will not do it because of what happens if they do. And it was funny, I was reading a study and it was saying that 55% of women are unhappy in their sexual relationships because of fear of what their husband or what society would think about them if they were to do this. And so it's so interesting how the way that societal norms are based on this affects women's actual, like, the way they are in their relationships and in their marriage, because this is what they
Yeah.
want.
And I think, hey, everybody in Australia, if you disagree with me, I'll take it on the wrist, no problem. But I think that so what I hear and what I feel pretty strongly, we've got to stop living our private relationship based on societal or
Mm,
external viewpoints. Because if we're comparing what we have to what other people do or don't have, comparison is deadly, even when it's to a societal expectation. And I think we have to be so careful that what I have with my wife, what you have with your husband,
mhm,
or anybody else has with an intimate partner, it's based on them. I don't talk
yeah,
about, most of those private conversations I have are off limits with other people, but I am open with my wife about likes,
mhm,
dislikes, needs, wants, desires. If something is incredible, I'm gonna tell her that was incredible. If something wasn't that great, I'm gonna
yeah,
go, wow, that just
mhm,
for me, not accusatory, not blaming my
yeah,
wife for anything that did or didn't happen because she doesn't sometimes, she'll I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing." And she'll say, "Oh yeah, well,
yeah,
didn't really do much for me." And so then it's not and she's not telling me to guilt me, but
right,
she's communicating so we have a deep connection because
yeah,
I'm concerned about her having as good or better of an experience than I do, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and I think that so when we're talking about those things internally, so kind of want to move on to our point number 2.
mhm,
And I see Lakisa made a great comment. She said comparisons in the social media driven society are dangerous, and they
yeah,
are because I think one of the careful things we have to do relative to social media, Lakisa, is that can't be the mirror we look in. The mirror we look in
yeah,
has got to be ourselves first individually, and then ourselves with our partner. And that's a private moment and experience. And
mhm,
I don't really care what people say about us, about what we should or shouldn't be. I have one contract, and that contract
right,
is with my partner. And if
that's
I'm
right,
fulfilling all those terms and doing well, this is where you can tell society to, take that long jump, right?
yeah.
So, Estrella, how do we prevent gender roles from negatively impacting our romantic relationships? Like, what are some of the things that we can do to keep those external forces, beliefs, and thoughts out when
Yeah.
we're making those decisions about what's best and right for us?
Well, I think the first thing is, one, being aware that it's affecting your relationship. So being aware that it's even happening and understanding that this is something that has affected or is affecting your relationship. Two, of course, if they need to go to therapy and really talk through it, do some self-searching, really being able to see, okay, why is it that I feel the way I feel in regard to these gender roles and these norms, and really being able to sit with your spouse and talk about, just like you said, as people, not the roles, but as people, what is it that we actually need from one another? So let's just take the role part out of it. And what do we need from one another? Being able to be
Mm,
honest with one another, being able to be vulnerable in that moment, and really being able to share what we need from one another, and understanding that if you need something from me, that does not make you weak. That does not make you um, any different in my eyes. It actually brings us together. So when we
sure.
can take these gender roles out of it and we can take away what society says, then as a couple, it makes us stronger and it makes us now grow together because we are actually servicing one another as individuals and as people. And so I think just really being open, honest, and having transparent conversations and being able to say, what is it that we need now? Not what my mom taught me, not what my dad taught me, not what society is saying. Because that's the other thing. To be very honest, a lot of times we listen to also what our past generations have said about what we should be doing in regards to our role. But what we find is the world was different back then. Things were different back then, times were different back then. And now, where we are, what worked for them does not work for us. And so we have to be able to recognize that and really be transparent and have conversation.
I think you're so right. And there was a comment from Lakeisha earlier. She said, when people don't know themselves before partnering, like they're not aware, maybe
Mm,
it's really hard for them to take those steps. And so, one of my favorite questions that I just put in the chat, Estrella, is asking your partner, how can I best support you now with your number one needs? And that
mm,
should be a daily, weekly, monthly. That's not one and done. That's all the time, because as you know,
yeah.
our stressors are different, or
Hmm.
anxiety, or we're struggling with something. And I think that if there are things that you're uncomfortable with in your relationship, I just can't talk about my desires. I can't talk about what I like. I feel
Hmm.
shame, or I've got anxiety around that. It's not a bad idea to work with someone externally to get a
Yeah.
clear understanding, whether it's a therapist or whether
Hmm.
it's a relationship coach, like Estrella or me. Say,
Hmm.
listen, I'm struggling with this and I need to work
Yeah.
through it, because you want to be comfortable and clear on your own desires, expectations, and what you struggle with. Then
Yeah.
you can come to the relationship, say, hey, I'm working through this, or I'm uncomfortable
Hmm.
with this, or we need to talk about that. And I think a lot of people don't do that. Like they think it's dirty or shameful to talk about those
Yeah.
things. And really, it's just clear communication. It's no different than talking about your financial needs or your financial
Hmm.
securities and saying, I don't feel comfortable with you spending more than 500 bucks unless you talk to me, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a boundary, it's a limit, and it's honest communication. That's no different than, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with this kind of situation that happens with us intimately," or
Yeah.
I have a little anxiety about that. Can we please talk about it?" Right?
Yeah.
And I think that, Astray, and I know this, and a lot of our listeners have heard this, that emotionally, when we talk about gender roles, when we're shying away from that emotional intimacy, like we don't want to cover any
Hmm.
topics that are taboo or that might expose me or you, people don't necessarily do well. So I think breaking
Right.
through that unwillingness and being more willing, like nothing should be off the
Hmm.
table,
Yeah.
even if one partner wants to do something crazy, that you can
Hmm.
just go, okay,
Yeah.
well, I understand. Thanks for being real. I'm not gonna crucify or blame you, but
Hmm.
wow, I just don't think I'd feel good doing that, or I'm not comfortable, or that
Yeah.
makes me feel strange.
Hmm.
That's normal and that's fine. And even though we have different desires and different needs, expressing and sharing is gonna create that intimacy, even if we're not in agreement, because it brings us
Absolutely.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what about our
Absolutely.
third point? What can we do to make sure both roles are equally and healthfully expressed? So, if as a
Mm-hmm.
man, if you're talking to me and my wife, Estrella, and I'm trying to make sure I'm expressing more of my feminine side and my qualities, and my wife is saying, how can I show up in some of the more masculine? What do we do? What are those first steps?
Yeah, I think the first steps honestly are identifying them. What is a feminine role? What is the masculine role? And then being able to say, again, in this relationship, what does that look like for us? So if it is the husband, let's just say he's saying, well, how can I be, or how can you help me in this way? Well, a lot of
Mhm.
times we talked about this earlier. A lot of times men struggle with communication because when they were younger, they weren't made to communicate. And so one thing a woman could do is say, well, I can help you with expressing your feelings. I can help you with expressing and identifying the emotions that you're feeling. I can be patient. I can help you by being patient. I can help you by being understanding. I can help you when you begin to shut down and you stonewall. I can help you by identifying what feelings you're having through our conversation. If it is that a woman is saying, well, there are more things that I want to do in regards to the masculine side of this and helping in leadership and helping in that role in the relationship, well then what does that look like for us? Does that mean now we're sharing the role of maybe it's paying the bills, maybe both of us are out working, and now
Sure.
we have to come in and we have to look at how do we now work as a team, but how do we allow each of us to feel like we are coming to the table together and that now this is a balance? We talk about even with parenting roles, right? And you have like the mom technically is supposed to be the caretaker. Well, the husband needs to do that. He needs to be a nurturer. The man needs to
Sure.
be able to do those things as well because they're important. And so now the question is, how can I be more of that? And so we almost have to teach each other how to be those things. We have to teach each other how to do those roles. A lot of times I'll have couples where the baby will be born and the male normally has kind of like a hesitancy in holding the newborn baby. They like to wait sometimes until the baby is a little older, but they have trouble holding the newborn baby, and it's like, no, like you can hold the baby, and as a
Sure.
wife, I'm going to help you and I'm going to make you feel comfortable in your discomfort. And
Right.
so I think it's about supporting one another, being honest again in what those roles are. How can I show up in more of a quote unquote feminine way? And when we were off set, we talked a little bit about the role of, or the word feminine and the word masculine, and how some people may even be uncomfortable with using that word when we talk about qualities, but technically it's just a softer quality. And how can I be that? How can I not always have on this face if I'm a man? That is tiring, not to go off, but for men,
Yeah.
that's tiring to always have this face of masculinity, or I got it all together. That's not always that's not always okay to be in that way. It's okay to say, hey babe, I need help in this, and that's okay. And so I think just again, the couple really talking about what this means for their relationship. What more do each of them want to actually bring in that regard of femininity and masculinity? And then how do
Sure.
we weave that in together, and how do we support each other?
Yeah, that's huge. Roles, responsibilities, and agreements, right? It's
Yeah.
negotiating. It's not contractual. You're not signing on the dotted line, so to speak,
Hmm.
but you're getting agreement because it's like, all right, what are the roles? And it's not, well, you're going to do all the nurturing because you're the woman. I love
Yeah.
nurturing my kids. I love those 3:30 a.m.
Hmm.
feedings. Baby smell and changing diapers and feeding
Hmm.
them. And my favorite thing to do was having that baby on my chest when they slept so I could take a nap and just have
Yes.
them right there leaning back in the couch or the chair. We had a question come in. It says, how does one work on getting more clear on what your own needs are and then feel okay with sharing them? And I think that's a great question that came in from Holly. And Holly, I think that to work on your own needs, if you're not sure what you need,
Hmm.
think about, we're talking about roles, we're talking about masculine and feminine. And I think having a really clear understanding of how you want to perform, and how, in other words, what do you
Hmm.
want in the relationship and how do you want to be acting around those roles, and making sure that you're comfortable with it, and then talking to your partner, hey, this is my comfort zone. It doesn't mean you're always going to hang out in your comfort zone,
Hmm.
because you might need to be stretched to fulfill those other roles, and a good partner is going to stretch you. They're going to push you and say, hey, you know what, you can do this, let's talk about it. So I think communicating where you'd like to be and the role
Hmm.
you'd like to have, and seeing how your partner feels about that. And you can feel okay in sharing those things, because if you feel this is what I need to be happy, fulfilled, supported, and uplifted,
Hmm.
you're allowed to feel that way. And if your partner feels that they can't do that, then you've got to work on that together. It's a negotiation, because I'm going to do everything in my power to give my partner what they need,
Yeah.
even if it's easy, if it's hard, it's not always convenient, but I'm
Hmm.
willing to inconvenience myself. And if I don't know how to do it, either I'm going to learn from someone so they can teach me how I can better support, or I'm going to say, babe, I don't know if I can do that. I might need to get some help from someone that can give you that, because A, I don't know
Yeah.
how, and B, I don't know if I can. That's okay too. And I
Yeah.
think it's okay to have that conversation. And we're talking about roles and responsibilities. I want to share a little story with everybody. When we got married, before Kim and I got married, and a lot of couples probably do this, what's married life going to look like? And how do you feel
Mhm.
about working? And do you want kids? And, and my wife said to me, she said, you know what? She said, I don't mind working and doing what we need as a family. She said, but when our kids are born, I think it's really important that one of us, if we can swing it financially, stay home
Mhm.
and be the primary caregiver. So there's one always in the home. And doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're off the hook, buddy, that you're not going to do stuff with these kids. But it means she goes, that's what I want. That's my dream. I want to be a mom. And I said, I'm fine with that. And I agree that one parent ideally should be in the
Mhm.
home full time if you can do it. Not everybody can do that. We were blessed to be
Yeah.
able to do that. But I still had to learn, as you said earlier, Estrella, those roles, those responsibilities. But we talked about it. She expressed her
Mhm.
needs. I expressed mine. I said, just because I'm the primary breadwinner doesn't mean I want to be disconnected from my kids. And I
Yeah.
took the feedings and I did what I had to do. I changed the diapers. I fed the bot. I mean, was willing because we had a very colicky first child. I'd come home and she'd be at the door, this crying baby, like, I need a break. Get this
Yeah.
child away from me, right? It's been driving
Mhm.
me crazy all day. Even though I had come home from work, and most men are like, well, wait, I've been working all day too. And,
Mhm.
that's an old model of like, I've done my bit. It's my time to relax. I think that's
Yeah.
a lot of our parents and our other greatest
Mhm.
generations, hey, the man comes home and you're to make him comfortable and he's not, don't tax him, don't make him do things. Well,
Mhm.
hey, I think that that ship has sailed, so to speak.
Yeah.
And gosh, man, what a fun conversation today, Estrella. I think, if you're enjoying this conversation, we are here every Tuesday having lively conversations. Sometimes it's me. I get to have rock stars like Estrella and other experts on talking about these issues. But this has been a great discussion because I think if I had to summarize, our bottom line is everybody can grow in male
Mhm.
and female roles, and we can just make it more about what does each partner need to feel whole,
Yeah.
satisfied, supported, complete, and how can we grow in our expression of those qualities as a man and as a woman together. And if these are things that you struggle with, Estrella, as I said earlier, is one of our KCN coaches and therapists. We do live webinars once a month. We have coaching. Estrella can work with couples and me on how do you get rid of the obstacles that are getting in the way of that intimacy, of defining those roles in the
Yeah.
best way. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com. You can get a free relationship assessment call set up with me. We'd love to work with you, help you eliminate those obstacles so you can get back to your own relationship nirvana. We have a podcast that Kim and I are co-hosts on, the Kick-Ass Couples podcast. Estrella's been on that as a guest in special episodes. We have so much great stuff. We'd love for you to check it out. So thanks for joining us today. Estrella, always a pleasure to rap with you. I feel
Thank
like we could go on for a
you.
couple more hours if we
I know.
both had nothing else to do, right? And we have a lot of fun. Thanks for everybody that joined us today, or if you're watching the recording of this, which will be up on our Instagram page soon. We appreciate you and want you to remember that happily ever after does not just happen. It is most definitely on purpose, guys. So come back every Tuesday, 12 to 12:30. Send us a message at Kick-Ass Couples Nation on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or YouTube. We can't wait to be together with you again. Have a great rest of your day. And Estrella, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I
All right,
enjoyed. Thank you
everybody.
so much.